Melody Salesforce Flowsome.
Hello Flowsome people, welcome to the Salesforce Flowsome channel. In this video, we are going to introduce how to work with debug logs to test your flow. When I first knew about the debug logs, I was really overwhelmed. It is one of the features that I had a hard time understanding, and to be honest, I still don't get it 100%. So if you also got frustrated learning it, you are not alone and don't worry. What I realized is that you don't need to know everything in order to use the debug logs properly. Most of the time, you only need to know what to look for. So today, I will cover why do we need debug logs, what do we usually check when testing flows, and how to navigate the logs. I will only go through the essentials and keep out the parts that are too technical, so it will be perfect for people that don't have experience with debug logs at all. Let's get started. First of all, what is debug logs? Debug logs are the system-generated files to track events that occur in your org. There are many types of events, and automation is one of them. This means that whatever happens in your flow, you can see them in the debug logs. So the first question to ask is, why do we need debug logs when we can debug in Flow Builder? I will call that a flow debugger. There are many reasons behind it. First, to see the complete operation. The flow debugger only works on the current flow that you are building, but you might have several flows or Apex triggers running at the same time in your production. If you want to see how each automation interact with each other, you will have to see that from the debug logs. Second is to see the operation details. For record trigger flow and schedule trigger flow, the flow debugger only works on one record and always in rollback mode. If you want to see how many records entered this flow or if they get updated successfully, you will have to check the debug logs. The third is to understand the usage of each limit. In Flow Debugger, you can only see the usage for each step, but not the total. But you can easily track the total usage in the debug logs. This helps you study the governance limits more efficiently. Lastly, to understand flow bulkification. By using the debug logs, you can see how flow interviews are being grouped. This helps you conceptualize the flow bulkification. So if you want to take your flow skills to the next level, it is critical to learn how to utilize the debug logs. However, a debug log is not automatically generated. You have to tell the system what you want to see before the event happens. This makes sense because imagine if Salesforce is generating every file for every event, the demand will be unbearable for the server and the storage. So the first step to use the debug log is to tell the system which event we want to track. We can achieve this by setting up the trace flags. So now, let us go to the interface. You can find the debug log from the setup. When you are here, you can click New to create new trace flag. There are several elements for a trace flag. First is the trace entity type. This means you want to track the event triggered by who or what. When it's about flow, you will most likely use user or automated process user. Then the trace entity name is the specific target under the type. For example, if the type is user, you have to specify which user. But since automated process user is just one system user, you won't be able to choose any other entity name. Note that it is a bit unclear when exactly the automated process user will be used. There is a chatter invitation, and Flow Orchestrator also uses it. So if you're unsure, you can set up two trace flags to see which one is being used. Then for the start date and expiration date, set the time period you want to track. The system will only generate the logs if the events happen within this range. One important note is, even though you can set the start date in the past, the system will still only track the events that happen after you set up the trace flag. For example, right now it's 11 o'clock. If I set the start date into 10 o'clock all the way to 12. Once I save this trace flag, the system will only generate the debug logs for the event that happened after 11, not 10 o'clock. All the events in the past are untraceable if there was no active trace flag at that time. Lastly, it is the debug level, which specifies which information you want to include and how detailed you want it to be. So here you can click New Debug Level to set up a new one. And you can change the level here to see what events will be included in this level. When working with Flow, I always change the workflow category into Finer. So here you can see these are all the events that will be included. And I will also choose none for some of the very specific categories. For example, like code out, Apex code, or video force page. This is to filter out the noise. So let's give it a name. So after you set up the trace flag and fire a flow, a log will be generated, and the hard part begins. We have to try to get the information we need out from this massive ocean of words. So here, let's walk through an actual example. So I will set up the trace flag as such, and my debug level is using this one, which only has final level on the workflow category and has none on any other category. So here you will set up the time properly and click Save. And I will use this flow as example. This flow updates the employee field to 1 for all the test accounts that's updated. So once I activate this flow and I try to update a test account, you see the employee fields is updated to 1. And let's go back to the debug logs again. You will see there will be new logs generated. So let's look at the files generated after I try to update that test account. Sometimes multiple files will be generated, which I haven't found the exact reason, but that's not dig too deep either. You can look at the file size to see which one is bigger. That one will have more details, so it's the one we should be looking at. So let's click on View. In this file, there are several components we need to know. First is the header, which contains the API version for this operation and the debug level that we just set up. Then we will see many log lines. In each line, you have the time and the event for that log line. That's the most essential information we need to know. If you are interested in the details, you can go to the official document listed in the video description. So here we can see many different flow events. Which of them are the most useful ones? Personally, I will always look for the flow limit usage. You can try to locate this big block of codes or search the keywords like SOQL queries. You can see how the usage is being used progressively. So for example, when I just started, I didn't use any query or DML statement. But later on in the flow, now I have used 1 DML rows and 1 DML statement. This is showing you the progress of how the governance limits are being used instead of the usage for each specific element, which we usually see in the flow debugger. So then let's look at a more complicated operation. I have the same record trigger flow, but now I will use the data loader to mass update 250 accounts. I have already done this operation. Here are the debug logs generated. So let's take a look at them. So we will see 3 things in this file. First is you will realize when we update more than 200 records, multiple files will be generated. For example, in this file, if I search for SOQL query, and I go to the bottom, you see the last one of the government limits block. You can see the DML rows, it's only 200. And if we go to the second file that we just opened and do the same, SOQL query, and then we go to the last one, you can see there's only 50 DML rows here. This means when you use data loader to bulk edit the records, the system will actually batch the operation with a size of 200 and divide it into multiple transactions. Each transaction resets the governance limits. So that's why we will see 50 here and 200 in the previous file, instead of 250 in one single file. The second thing we will see is, in both files, there will be one flow interview per record. Take this 200 records file, for example. If we start from the beginning, you will see there are many flow interviews being created. If you really do a count, there should be 200 flow interviews being created. And in another file, there will be 50 flow interviews being created. So this means that if the record meets the flow entry criteria, each record will generate one flow interview. So we can conclude here that flow interview is not the same as transaction. And this is a very important concept that people might misunderstand sometimes. The third thing we can see is if we search for DML and then go to the last one, you can see that even though there are more than one flow interviews being generated, it will still use only one DML statement instead of 200. This is where the bulkification comes in. Flow has this feature that will hold and group the flow interviews based on their current step, and then execute the actions in bulk. For example, all of these flow interviews have an update records elements as we saw in the flow. So the system will group them together in a size of 200 and then update them at once. This is why only one DML statement is used instead of 200. This is also why we say, always build your record trigger flow or schedule trigger flow as if it's only for one record, because the system will do the bulkification for you. Okay, now we finished the hardest part. Lastly, let's look at how debug logs will look like for schedule trigger flow. I saved this exact flow into a schedule trigger flow and ran it once, and here are the logs generated. The files are very similar to our record trigger flow. You can also see the DML rows are separated into 200 and 50. This means the schedule trigger flow will have the same feature as the record trigger flow, which is separating the operation into several transactions. The one thing that's different for schedule trigger flow is it has a new file. And if we open that file, it will tell you how many records entered this flow. This is really beneficial if you want to check whether your schedule trigger flow is set up correctly. So that's all for our sharing today. There are a lot more to learn about debug logs. I'm also working on this, but the concepts we covered today should be quite sufficient if you're working with Flow. I hope you find this video useful and leave a comment if you have any suggestions. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and turn on notification. Salesforce Flowsome, thank you for watching.